You're watching Nation at 9. I'm Gauri Dwivedi. The big bilateral meeting between Prime Minister Modi and US President Donald Trump will begin in 45 minutes from now. And ahead of that, we deep dive into what can be the big takeaways, what could be the expectations as far as this crucial meeting is concerned. Remember, United States and India are close to a historic partnership, a defining partnership of this century is what some are calling it, with both leaders sharing a warmth that is testimony to a closeness that hasn't been seen in these ties for some time now. And both sides are acutely aware that the celebrations in Houston and the personal rapport between the two leaders must yield some tangible outcomes. A win-win partnership for both India and the United States. Which is why, as I had said, a lot is riding for both the leaders as well as for the partnership as well for the Indo-US ties as they meet for the fourth time in the last 4 months. Third bilateral after G20 in Osaka and G7 in France. Of course, terror and global isolation of Imran Khan that has been dominating headlines the last 48 hours after the Houston event, and rightfully so, is important. The fact is, progress on trade is equally crucial. While the United States has said India needs to slash its high tariff regime, India has been asking for the restoration of the GSP system of preferential treatment that was given to Indian exports. So how much progress can be expected in these crucial meetings? Yes, if thorny trade issues can be thrashed out, Indo-US ties will move on to the next level strategically. Whether it is in terms of a larger place for India in Afghan peace process, whether it's about the overall fight against terror when India and US could play a very crucial role, and yes, of course, as far as the territory of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir is concerned. But as I said, how much of that can actually happen in the next few days is the big debate that we are having this Tuesday evening. Can we have a trade pact between two sides as is being speculated? Or will this be only directional in nature? 45 minutes to go for the bilateral, the big debate right here on NewsX. Joining me on the broadcast in the studio, Pathikrit Pine, who's a strategic affairs expert, Ambassador Fabian, former diplomat, also with us on the broadcast, Mr. Deshrata Nigam, political analyst, representing the BJP would be Gopal Krishna Agarwal, Shri Iyer joining us on a Skype connection, Ashutosh Mishra, also a political analyst. In fact, let me begin with Shri Iyer. He's joining us from the valley. He's going to give us, he's got his ear to the ground, so to say. Shri Iyer, help us understand, sir. You know, there are two perspectives. One, of course, is that, well, at the end of the day, trade issues are the thorny issues for both India and US. Can we expect some actual progress to be made, or can we expect more announcements that are directional in nature, that yes, we've made progress, but still there is a lot of ground to cover?
I think you will see some tangible decisions. For example, I expect that some of the defense manufacturing that is currently in the United States will find its way to India. And the reason for that is India has proven itself to be a very mature democracy. Its army is very disciplined. The way India has gone about developing technology has been step by step, and that infuses a lot of confidence in the United States, especially in companies like Lockheed Martin and Boeing, where, you know, the value of the individual components is high, but the number that is manufactured is not very high. So what could very well happen is some of the older technologies, like in fighter aircraft or anything else, you know, could actually get manufactured in India for consumption outside of India, outside of the United States. This is probably my guess, and the reason I'm taking this guess is that Friday order saying that new companies are going to be taxed at 15%. I mean, and for this kind of a manufacturing deal to happen, you need to have some new companies come along in India. So I expect that to happen. The other thing is, Trump hinted that we are going to do some defense deals in his speech at Houston. Yes. So that I'm just trying to put two and two together. Let's see what happens. Yes,
let's take defense in just a bit, because let's first address trade right now, because that's really what many are saying very fundamental to the talks right now. And, that's something on which I want to first bring in Professor Nalapat and then also the diplomat on the panel as well. Professor Nalapat, a lot is riding as far as trade talks are concerned for both sides. And do you expect some serious progress, as Sri Iyer said, to be made?
There's no doubt that serious progress is possible, but both sides have got to think out of the box, and both sides have got to take the relationship forward much faster than has usually been the case so far. Now, in the case of the United States, trade and defense in a sense will be linked, in the sense that if India does more in terms of linking up with the United States on defense, obviously it will get greater leeway on trade. So the two issues would be linked. But there's no doubt that several US companies are looking at India as a manufacturing destination where you get reasonably priced labor and other factors of production that can make the final stages of production of US made products very competitive in world markets in a way that cannot be the case if all of them were to be manufactured entirely in the US.
Okay. Ambassador Fabian, I want to bring you in here, sir, because at the end of the day, when you talk about talks and when you have leaders like Prime Minister Modi and President Trump who have a certain a position that they have taken on several of these issues, like Donald Trump is on record saying India is the king of tariffs, and I was actually going through some of the tariffs that India imposes. It cannot be said that we are imposing low tariffs by no stretch of imagination. So to that extent, how much of progress can be made on specific issues? Because, Donald Trump would like to be seen as the US president who did ensure lower tariffs. Likewise, Prime Minister Modi needs to have, a certain cushion when it comes to the domestic industry.
Absolutely. I mean, if we want to have a Make in India policy, obviously we cannot be importing everything from outside. And therefore, there have to be some restrictions, and tariff is one of the restrictions. And we have a right to do it. We don't have to be apologetic about it. This reckless globalization of a single market doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
I mean, imagine all the photocopiers in the world are made in China. Does it make sense? No, it doesn't. So, I think we are absolutely right when we say that we have to retain certain tariffs. And as regards President Trump, well, he considers himself, and I suppose he is, a deal maker.
Yes.
But not that he succeeds in all the deals he makes or he wants to make. So he will be a very hard bargainer. There is no doubt about it. But I'm sure that India can stand up to it. I mean, you mentioned about generalized system of preferences.
Yes.
It's about $5.7 billion.
Yes.
What we were exporting to the United States. It's very important for us. And as I say, we are entitled to it.
Yes.
But with President Trump, it's always a bargain. It's a question of deal making. So it's a question of negotiating skills, and we have it. But having said that, I do not say that there will be a trade deal. It may be there, it may not be there. We have to watch and see.
It could be just some progress, and I just want to tell our viewers again, this is not about lots of facts and figures. This is more about big picture. But I just want to tell our viewers that when you talk about trade wars, when you talk about the focus on tariffs, let's not forget that the size of the Indo-US trade is about a fifth of what the US-Chinese trade is. Very simply put, $150 billion, close to about $750 billion. That's the very basic level at which we are having this conversation. India wants to, of course, make the most of the US-Chinese trade wars right now. How it happens really is what the bilateral would be really focused on. Pathikrit, I want to bring you in that, specifics as far as trade, investment, commerce is concerned, that's going to dominate the bilateral.
Gauri, I'll just start with two things. You talked about the Indo-China trade being more than that of Indo-American. Fact of the matter is most of the American companies are themselves manufacturing in China.
Yes.
So in any case, whenever you're procuring something, it will be more from China. Secondly, fact of the, again, it's a reality that most countries, including United States, is protectionist at some place. It's not that only India is protectionist and America is not. There are a lot of occasions they have also stopped foreign company from acquiring their companies, and many other cases are there. So so there are certain areas where there will be agreement, there are areas of disagreement, and there are areas of negotiations.
Yes.
One area, when you talk about trade, see, both the countries, presidents or prime minister would have to create jobs back home. So a full-fledged trade deal is a challenge because both would want manufacturing to happen in their own country. One area there is a convergence, and there is an absolute possibility of convergence is you can reduce the trade deficit by taking more oil and gas from United States. Given the kind of volatility that we have in Middle East today, irrespective of whether there is the possibility of war or not, terror attacks or attacks the way Houthis did it in Saudi Arab cannot be ruled out in future also. So to tide over that volatility, India has a potential to take more from United States. Right now we take only 6 million tons. But we almost take around 130 million tons from Middle East out of 233 that we take annually. So there is huge potential of India taking more from United States in terms of oil and gas, and that would reduce the trade deficit to a certain extent, or probably more or less it will reduce considerably. In that case, Trump asking for a trade deal will be less.
Okay.
Okay. But there are areas where there will be contention. One is data localization.
Yes.
That day also Prime Minister made it very clear, data is gold.
Yes.
Data is oil. So on data localization, the government of India has taken a very strict stand.
And I think that's something that the Americans would want to dilute.
And that's where they have a very different view, because the American business lobby wants something else.
Obviously.
Secondly, there is this issue of certain restrictions being put on e-commerce companies as to how much they can source from a specific vendor.
Yes.
India again has a very strict, they have put their hands
that have just come
on
in.
that. That because they have to protect the small traders also. So yes, but again, doesn't mean that you stop talking. Doesn't mean it's a face-off and state. The reason is because see, you have trade, and that's why you would have some disputes. If you didn't have trade, there wouldn't have been disputes. So one is definitely in the area of oil. Second is definitely in the area of defense. Defense deals, oil deals will reduce the serious concern that America right now has in terms of trade. There's a huge surplus that India has.
24 billion.
Other thing is that India is also saying that, look, you have a dispute with China in terms of trade. So I am giving you an option to shift many of your manufacturing base into India.
Right.
Say corporate tax reduction and 100% FDI in contract manufacturing.
That's very significant.
That creates a lot of opportunities. One last point, there is again a clause, a caution. If the American companies come and tomorrow say a particular American company says, I want to make this defense product in India.
Yes.
Suddenly everybody becomes happy. But if there's a condition that your government will have to buy it from me only, then it's not going to happen like that.
Of course.
Then it will be something else. Whatever is in Indian interest, that will be bought.
Of course.
Okay. So overall, yes, there are a lot of positives. But again, there are areas of concern.
So there has to be a lot of give and take, and that's really where, diplomacy, trade, all these issues converge. Mr. Nigam, quick thoughts on this?
The fact remains that, as rightly pointed out by Pratikrit, that energy is one area where, it serves the purpose of both the countries. Reduces the trade imbalance, which is against USA, and also meets the energy needs of India, especially in view of the impending Iran crisis.
Yes.
And therefore, India may be able to have some concessions even from USA. The first deal which has happened is in the field of energy. The Petronet decided to invest $2.5 billion, which reduces the trade deficit to some extent also.
Yes.
And secondly, the shifting of base by the companies from China to India should be our main focus, to shift manufacturing, where America will have another base of manufacturing in India. So we need to balance, both the countries need to balance made in America and made in India in such a manner that it is a win-win situation. Some of the, they require cheap manufacturing so that the prices of the goods remain low.
Exactly.
And therefore, it is prudent for American companies to shift base, especially after the corporate tax relief given for new setups.
That's a fair point. And before I get in both Ashutosh into this broadcast and even Gopal Krishna Agarwal, I want to quickly go back to both Professor Nalapat and Sri Iyer. Sir, when you talk about give and take when it comes to trade, of course, even India appreciates and realizes that if the thorny trade issues are sort of thrashed out as early as possible, then the larger issues related to strategic cooperation will be able to be much fast-tracked, as far as whether you talk about the Afghan peace process, whether you talk about Kashmir, POK, but all of that hinges on how much progress you really make on trade. Professor Nalapal?
Yeah, you're quite right. The fact is that Prime Minister Modi is a problem solver, and Modi 2.0, I'm glad to say, has got off to a truly flying start. Now, I'm here actually in Taipei, and if Taiwan has more than 1 lakh industrial units in China, 1 lakh. The number of industrial units in India is far below 1,000, which is 1%. Now, if you look at the population of India, if you look at the cost structure in India, you look at the talent pool in India, there should be at least 400,000 Taiwanese entities in India. That is the potential that India has got, whether from Taiwan or from companies relocating from China or from companies moving from the United States. There's immense potential, and for that certain regulatory changes have got to be made. I am very optimistic that these changes will be made, given the fact that you have had such major changes in company taxation and hopefully in personal taxation as well.
Right.
So it's very clear Modi 2.0 is getting off to a flying start. And I again remind you, here in Taiwan, 1 lakh industrial units are based in China, less than 1,000 in India. 1%, less than 1% are in India. That's the potential.
That's the potential. But Shri Iyer, I want to ask you this, sir, that Pathikrit raised a very important point as far as those data localization and e-commerce changes, policy changes that have been made by India. All of this, the American companies have been very vocal about. They've been very vocal against these policies. And some of them, of course, you know, the Amazons, or whether you talk about the Google, Microsoft, all of them, of course, are big corporate giants in the US, and they obviously hold a lot of sway and influence.
Well, I think we are bolting the farm after the horse has left it. The reason I say that is when GST was unveiled, I was one of the first ones to say that the GSTN data, the data that was the backbone of all the GST transactions, was already available for everybody outside of India. Now if we try and bolt it down and make sure that the data resides here, it's only the new incremental data that India is protecting. Unfortunately, whether it was the Aadhaar data or the GST data that was available to everyone before India realized and closed it. But that's just a minor thing. Even Germany insists that the data that is generated of Germans stays in the geographical boundaries of Germany, and they are bound by what is called as GDPR.
Okay.
And in India, we'll have to come up with a similar thing to say that the data stays here and the access will be there, but it will be an orderly access. What is orderly access? If there is some forensics needed, then they would have to go through and get a magistrate's permission or something of that nature. The other thing I wanted to just add on real quickly is defense companies in the United States have to go through special permissions from the State Department and the Commerce Department in order to manufacture outside of the United States.
Right.
So in the US, they are paying 35% corporate tax.
Yes.
15% is very enticing for them,
Absolutely,
especially
yes.
when they can just use that to supply to outside US
Absolutely.
customers. It's a very compelling thing.
It is rolling the red carpet.
Absolutely, and I'd just like to insist one thing that India do is that when it comes to subcontracting parts for all these things, make them yourself. Do not go to China just because they are cheaper.
Yes.
In the long run, it will play in your favor. Do not take the shortcut.
Okay. I want to now bring in the two political voices on the show. Gopal Krishna Agarwal and Ashutosh Mishra. Gopal Krishna Agarwal, to you first. You understand economy, you understand business, but at the end of the day, when you represent the BJP, you are acutely aware that the opposition has been pointing out that all of this has largely been a very PR sort of an exercise that Prime Minister Modi has been undertaking for the last couple of days.
Definitely, whenever you are going for an international travel like this, you have to look into what is the global perception. You have to build the global perception And from this only, from this PR exercise and leveraging only, you get a better negotiated deals. Ultimately, global diplomacy mostly depends on business economics and business deals and economic considerations. At present, if you see our relations with China, USA or a European country or Southeast Asian countries, African countries, everywhere the relations depends upon how better we have negotiation power on the economic issues. So economics is the most important thing.
Okay.
Business deals, bilateral deals, all talk about economics. So
Yes.
from this, the ultimately what we will gain is that at present there were two outcomes, our takeaways from this. One was about the global opinion and particularly USA's support.
Yes.
That Article 370
Yes.
is an internal matter.
Exactly.
And there is these POK
Yes.
and Pakistan. It's a bilateral issue between
Yes.
Pakistan and India. On these two issues, we have very well
Right.
got our point of view endorsed from the US. Second
Yes.
is now the negotiation deals with is taking place with the CEOs of various companies,
Yes.
with deals for H1 visa or global
Yes.
better deal for
Yes.
favored nation status
Absolutely,
with
yes.
US, FDI, technology transfer, defense deals, all these. Even Piyush Goyal is now in USA.
Obviously.
So, and
Obviously.
our foreign minister is there, all the secretaries
Of
are
course,
there.
Commerce Minister
These
has
are
to be
the
said.
negotiations which are taking place.
Exactly.
So
Trade, as I
ultimately,
said, is the backbone
this,
of the
optics has
bilateral.
helped
Absolutely.
This optics will help into our
Absolutely.
Yes.
A quick word from Ashutosh Mishra. Yes, go ahead, Ashutosh Mishra.
Business deals.
Yes.
So before I come to the politics, Gauri, I would also like to add something to the talks on trade. You know, there are two sore points between India and US. One is the US stand on farm subsidies, and the second is their insistence that we remove price caps on medical devices. Now, these are two important things on which how President Trump, what action does he take affects us, because after all, let's remember, medical stents devices means like stents and knee replacement. They will affect Ayushman Bharat, and farm subsidies is what things like PM Samman Yojana, Krishi Samman Yojana at all. So what his stand is there is very important for India, because I was just listening to President Trump addressing the UN Assembly, and he didn't have very nice things to say about WTO.
Right.
He was criticizing China for subsidies and tariffs, and as you rightly said, not only has he called India tariff king, he has also said that we are no longer a developing country. So all this matters a lot. I mean, just getting their defense
Yes.
deals and all, those are things that may come,
Of
may
course.
not come, but these are things which are affecting us today. What about the tariffs they have imposed on our steel and aluminium exporters?
Yes.
Those are the things, benefits if we get, then there will be a greater appreciation for Prime Minister Modi that he has actually succeeded. On the political front also, I mean, we just saw what President Trump did today. What did he do when he was sitting with Imran Khan?
Yes.
He said that I trust Prime Minister Khan, that people in Kashmir, everyone should be treated fairly. Now what does that mean? And again he made that offer that I am willing to mediate if both the sides want. So he keeps flip-flopping there also. So we have to be very wary, as our other panelists were saying, that he's a deal maker. And here what he's trying to do is use this whole meeting to sort of project to his US constituents that look, I am doing well. I've got people from India
Absolutely.
coming.
They're
who want
both
to buy our
politicians.
things,
They have
who are
domestic as
buying,
well as
who are ready
global
to buy our
constituencies to
gas, who are
address.
ready to buy
That
our-
holds true for both of them. They have domestic constituencies to also address, which is why some issues become so thorny and take time to be able to thrash out. But Mr. Fabian, I want to bring you in specifically as far as, Donald Trump is concerned. There are times when he does make a statement, and then there are times when he says something completely opposite of that.
Yeah, I think it's very important to understand Donald Trump. But before that, I want to make a point. we all should recognize that diplomacy involves dancing with more than one partner at a time. We sometimes think, just because there is excellent rapport between our Prime Minister and President Trump, that fully translates into bilateral relations, how they are handled.
Yes.
No, that is a bit naive. We also have to understand that if President Trump came to Houston, well, it was partly to show how important India is for the United States. But equally, it was because President Trump knew that he was going to benefit by coming there. After all, these 50,000, many of them are voters.
Yes.
And he has reason to expect, and I don't blame him, some financial contribution from them later for his election fund.
Of course.
So he came primarily for his own interest, which again, that's what politicians do.
Okay.
So we should not sort of, say that, because of the good personal rapport, the bilateral relations will be, will be smooth. Now, having said that, I think President Trump also can be inconsistent.
Right.
In other words, President Trump can contradict President Trump.
Yes.
Which he likes to do.
And he has a track record.
Yeah,
yes.
and which he likes to do and which he seems to enjoy. So, we also have to take that into account.
Yes, fair point. I have to take a quick response from Sri Iyer. He is wanting to come in and then we slip into a break. Yes, Sri Iyer.
Yes, Trump trumps Trump often. So,
Gauri, I also want to say.
Yes.
You have to always take his statements with a pinch of salt, and he's a transactional guy. I mean, he's a businessman, and that's how he approaches diplomacy. That's how he approaches politics. Everywhere, he's the same thing. But we have to also remember that the Democrats lost a golden opportunity not to show up at Houston.
Yes.
After all, they are assuming that the Indian American vote is going their way.
Yes.
Not true. 2016, Indians did not vote en masse to Democrat. There was a rethink, and the rethink happened because of some of the things that Hillary Clinton said. And now I'm seeing that Bernie Sanders is also making some intemperate statements that's going to hurt him. So now the field is Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Elizabeth Warren, but none of them showed up at this event. What was wrong in that? You could have done it. There's not, at least to blunt Trump's initiative.
Exactly.
I mean, I want a good fight. I don't want somebody to run away with the presidential election.
All right, fair enough. A quick word from Gopal Krishna Agarwal. He's wanting to come in. Quickly, sir. I need to take that commercial break. Yes.
Yeah, yes. What I want to tell you, Gauri, is that this international diplomacy requires deal making, requires a bargain. You have to give something and get something.
Of course.
But how do you bargain? From which position do you bargain is very important. If you are just asking, give me this, nobody is going to give you. Therefore, now our bargaining power globally has increased because of our economic development or our diplomatic outreach or relations of the Prime Minister. So now we can negotiate with US at a very
absolutely.
At a better strength. We can bargain better.
All right.
So nobody can say that we will only take everything from US. We will not give to India.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Even now we have a good relation with China.
It's give and take. Gopal Krishna Agarwal, I will have to interrupt you there, sir, because I really do need to take that commercial break, sir. Quick 30 seconds. We come back and now talk big picture. Outside of trade, outside of commerce, outside of investment, the big picture as far as Indo-US ties are concerned, deepening of defense cooperation and all that is something we're going to touch upon. Stay with us.
Well, I think that the two leaders will be very enthusiastic about showcasing the chemistry that they have. It was on full display in Houston, and I think they'll want to show that as well, that these are two leaders that really get along and are willing to have their countries work together to do big things. I imagine that this meeting is going to be coming on the heels of Trump's meeting with Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan, which went very well from Pakistan's perspective. So I think that we're going to see Trump turn around once again and provide all these nice words and say very positive things about Modi. And that's what Trump likes to do. He likes to make people feel comfortable, whoever he's dealing with. But I do think that this is an opportunity for these two men to underscore again just how important the relationship is between the two countries and how far they're willing to go. I do think, there clearly have been efforts behind the scenes to get the two countries close to some type of trade agreement. I'm not sure if this meeting will be at the point where they announce it, but I think that they will likely highlight trade, and that's important because if there's one major constraint in the U.S.-India relationship these days, it's on the trade side. So if there's efforts to try to have more cooperation on the trade side, that can only be a good thing for this relationship, and I imagine the two leaders may talk about that.
Okay. And, Michael, Prime Minister Modi met energy CEOs in Texas. He's meeting top American CEOs in New York. His government has made some massive changes as far as taxation is concerned, all with a clear message that Modi means business. His government means business. They are looking for top dollar to come in.
Well, yeah, I think that not only does Modi mean business, but he plans to do business. He does intend to meet with a number of business leaders, and I think that he wants to showcase to an investment community in this country that still tends to be somewhat skeptical at times that India does offer great opportunities for business and for investment. But of course, it'll go broader than that too. Clearly, I think Prime Minister Modi wants to showcase the fact that India is a willing and able global partner that has made major efforts to address the types of global challenges that affect every country in the world, whether we're talking about climate change or whether we're talking like related development issues like that. This is clearly a prime minister that wants to highlight that India is capable of addressing these issues and has addressed them and will continue to address them.
And do you expect, this leading up to a larger narrative as far as India is concerned? Prime Minister Modi's address to the UNGA would be a culmination of, so to say, as to the talks that India and US have been having for the last couple of days?
Well, it's going to be a big and busy few days for Prime Minister Modi. He's got a lot planned. He's having a meeting with President Trump soon. He's going to be having a number of meetings with corporate bigwigs. He's, of course, going to be receiving an award from the Gates Foundation for India's work on facilitating access to sanitation. And then, of course, on Friday, he's going to make his big speech. I think that for Modi and for the Indian government, the objective of the next few days is really to highlight the position that India wants to occupy on the world stage. And India and Modi have a great opportunity, a very prominent platform to showcase what India can offer in terms of investment possibilities, in terms of its efforts on climate change, in terms of its efforts to meet the Millennium Millennium Challenge goal. So big objectives, ambitious objectives, but clearly the Prime Minister is ready to try to meet them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks, Michael, for that quick lowdown. We're going to have this conversation after the bilateral as well. In fact, that meeting is going to now start any minute. Thanks, Michael, for giving us that lowdown ahead of that crucial meeting. And, let me now open this up to the larger conversation in terms of whether it is defense ties, whether it is strategic ties. I'm going to begin with Professor Nalapat because, he's spoken at length about S-400. He's spoken at length about India's deepening of defense ties and where does it go from here when you talk about the US. Professor Nalapat, come in there, sir.
Well, I'd like to say that the India and the US are the two largest democracies that pointed out. And I don't think we should forget so early the immense significance of Trump being there in Houston, along with Prime Minister Modi. And the time he spent there, what he said, you contrast, for example, what Trump said about India and, of course, about India's leader, Prime Minister Modi. And in terms of, for example, more than 100 million people joining the middle class.
Yes.
Compare that with what he said a few hours ago about China. And you will see the reason why there is a strong momentum within the United States to get closer to India.
Okay.
As far as India is concerned, it is a fact that Pakistan and China are today the closest of defense allies. Russia and China are today the closest of defense allies.
Yes.
And the reality of the situation is that an alliance with India as a prominent member will have to look in terms of being of having primacy over the oceans, over cyberspace, over space, over technology. This is all very crucial to the future. And therefore, the question is, we can't do it alone. The United States cannot do it alone. So it makes sense for the two biggest democracies to come together. I think that's the significance of Trump and Modi meeting.
Exactly. I want to bring
this
in
very warm atmosphere.
Yes, I want to bring in first Particle Pine and then Ambassador Fabian on this. What Professor Nalapat touched upon, whether it is cyberspace, whether it is technology, whether it is deepening of defense cooperation, the whole quad that is being formed, all that is indicative of where the possibilities lie for the Indo-US ties.
Got it. Two things. I think India doesn't have a short memory, even though we are deepening the ties. There was a time when cryogenic engine was denied to India. There was a time when the GPS coordinates were not given to India during Kargil war. That's a reality. We cannot undermine that. Today, the deepening of this relationship have happened in spite of S-400 being acquired from Russia. That means one thing. America appreciates certain concerns and certain reasons for which India would have to continue taking certain defense equipment from Russia. And I think what is important, India has made it very clear that we are not going to give up our independence of foreign policy. Wherever it is necessary, of course there are a lot of things. I'll name 5 defense deals which are going to happen before Trump next election is going to happen. 24 MH-60 Sikorsky helicopters, 10 more PA-type Poseidon aircraft for Indian Navy, 30 odd Predator Guardian drones for Indian Navy, probably a few more Apache helicopters, then National Advanced Surface-to-Air Missiles, which America is also willing to sell and India has in principle agreed to buy. But again, it doesn't mean that I would not take any more Rafale from France. It doesn't mean that I would not take a nuclear submarine from Russia. That is something I have a little objection to. Otherwise, of course, it is extremely important that we are two natural allies and we are strategic partners. We have to deepen the relationship. If we have to look at it this way, that yes, I agree with what Mr. Nalapat talked about, the deepening of Russia and China. Russia, that is their business. They would sell it to whoever wants to buy. Even the Americans have sold to Pakistan F-16s and Bell helicopters, Cobra helicopters, Viper helicopters, many of the things. That doesn't, so we don't need to hyphenate the things. And the last one point, they want us to play an important role in Afghanistan. 2 quick points. Political leadership of India would not be willing to replace the American body bags with Indian body bags. Secondly, can India play a bigger role in Afghanistan without having a land access? If they don't want India to use the Chabahar port, are they going to help India to have another alternate route to Gilgit-Baltistan by letting or allowing or helping us to get the POK?
That's a very valid point, Ambassador Fabian. You want to come in there, sir?
Well, as far as
Afghanistan
is concerned, I'm afraid I don't see much prospect for India to play a more important role there. That is because A, Pakistan will oppose it tooth and nail. B, how can we play that role? I mean, we don't have the connectivity. And whatever developmental work we have done, well, we have done a lot in Afghanistan. But there have been attacks on our personnel. You know what I mean? So we have to be very careful about what can be done in Afghanistan. And second point is that, and I think it's important to mention this, for a long time in Delhi we thought Americans will not leave Afghanistan. There were clear signals that they were going to leave. But we didn't take those signals seriously. And we refused to talk to Taliban or about Taliban. You know, I think we have to look at the ground realities and have a calibrated policy towards Afghanistan without hoping to have an immediate entree to Afghanistan. That will take time. And don't forget that Trump, his election is coming up. He wants to announce the withdrawal of troops.
It's an election promise for him.
And he depends on Imran Khan's cooperation.
Of course.
To a great extent.
Shri Iyer, and then we get in Mr. Nigam as well. Shri Iyer, you were wanting to come in, sir.
China's CPEC project is in trouble.
Gauri.
I don't know if you've been.
I'm going to come to you, Gopal Krishna Agarwal. Just a minute, sir. Just a minute, I'm going to come to you. Shri Iyer first.
CPEC project is in trouble. They've stopped, working on it from the Gwadar side, And also China has been saying now that it is horrified at the amount of corruption that exists in Pakistan, wherein it is putting the money, but it is not seeing the results. Now, there's one way China can save face on CPEC, and that is to try and see if it can find a way to access Indian markets on CPEC. It is possible. Don't shout me down. It is possible. If they come down to Sialkot, then Sialkot to Jammu is not very far. You could have goods arriving from China into India via the CPEC highway. But that requires Pakistan to be more pliable. They need to understand the ground realities. I don't know what China can and will be able to do with Pakistan, but if that is possible, surely India can also be able to play a role in Afghanistan. This whole concept of, Pakistan being in the driver's seat as far as access to Afghanistan is concerned is something that can be turned on its head. It is not impossible. If the US sets its mind, it can use its power, air power, to get directly into Afghanistan and out. It is possible. It's just that there is going to be some, strong-willed minds that have to work on it. This is just my 2 cents.
Okay.
It could be a bit of a controversy, but we need to think positive.
Okay, yes. Deshrita Nigam sir, you were wanting to comment. Then we get in the BJP spokesperson.
I
Yes.
think most of the points have been covered by almost everybody. But one thing I would say, when President Trump drops in for an unscheduled, visit to hear Prime Minister Modi, Climate Councils meet, and leaves when Angela Merkel starts to speak, itself.
No, you heard Angela Merkel also. Yes.
So maybe, but my information was that. But that clearly shows that the strategic depth that India has, the strength that India has got on a negotiating table. Third, the personal equation between the two leaders. So this is all something which augurs well. Yes, when the negotiations takes place on a table, these are hard bargains, hard negotiations. So India today is in a position of strength which was lacking about, say, 5-10 years back.
Okay, yes. Professor Nalapad, you've been wanting to come in, sir. You're shaking your head, you're nodding your head.
Gauri. Yeah, Gauri, I just want to say that, we have heard this song before. We can't do this, we can't do that, we are helpless here, we are very weak here. Well, look, we have seen Balakot, that was in Modi 2.1. We have seen Article 370 being removed in a matter of hours. And I remember for how many times I've had arguments with officials dealing with finance about the question of lower taxes leading to higher revenue. No, we can't do that. That will break the budget. That will widen the deficit. That will shatter the economy. Well, we have lower taxes. And it's a good thing that we have done that. So the fact of the matter is that what couldn't be done in the past can be done in the future. And I think India needs to be a little more ambitious. Now, so far as, for example, S-400 is concerned, look, Turkey has lost the F-35 contract because of S-400. F-35 is an absolutely modern, state-of-the-art aircraft. I mean, as good or better as any aircraft flying in the sky, possibly better. Now, that program could shift to India. It is not going to shift to India if India also has the S-400.
Yes.
So we have to make choices. And we can't say we are here, we are there, we are everywhere. You have to have priorities. You have to make choices.
Has India said that it wants to have F-35? I mean, has the government of India or Indian Air Force said that we want to have Indian Air Force, that we want to have the F-35?
I'd like to say it's a great aircraft, and I do hope we get it.
No. Has the Indian Air Force said that we want the F-35 and we are not getting it because of S-400? I want to know that.
The Turkish people had the F-35. They were producing it, and that's been removed
That's
because
Turkey's
of
problem,
S-400.
Okay, Gopal Krishna Agarwal.
Gauri, can I say something?
Yes, sir.
What I want to say is that Professor Nilapat has very rightly said that at present our leadership is determined, they are decisive, and they look about the interest of the country. That's the most important part, and so we will see so many decisions which are in the national interest. Second point I want to make is why we need to focus too much on global interest, global outreach, The issue is we need to focus on our economy, our own trade interest. That's very important. In Afghanistan, we have done lot of investment. That protection is all right, but why we need to go into conflict zones? We don't have such any ambitions. We have several areas where we can expand our economic relation. Like Africa, we are doing lot of work. We have a third of Indo-African summit where 54 countries participated. There is ample scope for economic development in that area, investment in agriculture, infrastructure development, trade, etc. Secondly, we have areas like Southeast Asian countries, ASEAN countries, where we can expand. So we don't need to get into Afghanistan politics and get into a conflict zone. Let USA do it.
I disagree with that for so many reasons that we'll have an entire show on that.
Economic interest.
I disagree with it on so many reasons that we can end up having an entire show on that.
No,
but let me not derail this conversation we are having.
Yeah, but
on
we
the
have to look after our interest, economic interest is, I am telling you, Gauri, our economic, Gauri, I am telling you that economic interest, our domestic economic interests are very important.
Pakistan playing a larger role and almost dictating terms in Afghanistan. Let's be very clear about it, sir.
No, Pakistan.
Let's be very clear about it, sir. I'm sorry. We agree to disagree.
Already we have very good relation. I am not saying I am getting out of Afghanistan.
Okay, all right. As I said, if we start talking about it, the entire show can be derailed. Okay, let's get a quick
politics. We should be careful.
Okay, and then ensure that Pakistan has a huge lever that it continues to use against the United States, and whatever progress we've made so far, we lose all of it. As I said, an entire show can be had on that. Maybe Gopal Krishna Agarwal and we can have a separate conversation. Okay, Ashutosh Mishra hasn't been able to come in for a while. Let's get him in. Let's get him into this discussion, and then we come back to the larger debate, Pathikrit, that we were having as to what is the axis of world power, and can India fit into that axis of world power? With US being on one side and China on the other side. All right, those are live shots coming in. The bilateral all set to begin. Those are delegations going inside, American, Indian delegations going inside. Live shots coming in. Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump, US President. Okay, this is the shots coming in where both sides have walked inside to the United Nations building, and then of course the bilateral will take place in about 10 minutes from now. Those were live visuals coming in. All right, Ashutosh Mishra, quick word from you.
The 2-3 points I want to make, Gauri. First of all, Mr. Iyer was talking about why Joe Biden and all didn't turn up at Houston. So I would also like to remind him that Tulsi Gabbard, who is a Modi supporter and funded by RSS affiliates in US, she also didn't come. So maybe India is, it's not wise to put all our eggs in Trump's basket, number one. Then from all the conversation that we are having, it seems that what can we buy from US? That seems to be the be all and end all of this whole conversation. Why should we buy everything from them unless and until we get something in return? So it should not be that we try to give Trump everything so that he can say that, okay, I have got so many deals from India.
Okay.
And let's remember how he treated us in Afghanistan. He had mocked Prime Minister Modi about building that library in Afghanistan.
Yes.
When the America, Russia and China met, they didn't invite India, they invited Pakistan for Afghanistan.
Okay.
So they don't, and that 100 million middle class that Professor Nalapat was talking about is today in danger because India is suffering from an economic slowdown.
Yes.
And it is a story which we have been trying to sell to the world for quite some time. And now many companies are realizing that middle class is illusionary and it's not there.
Who said it's illusionary?
So
who is illusionary? What are you a part of? What am I a part of? So you may not be part of the middle class. I think I'm a part of the middle class. I mean, what illusionary concepts are we talking about? Okay, as I said, I don't want this conversation to be derailed,
part
sir.
of middle class, but that the
Sir, I don't want this conversation to be derailed. I want my producers to just put that. I want my producers to first put the location back. There is UN headquarters.
Going below.
UN headquarters. Let's put that out for our viewers tuning in right now to know that these are live visuals coming in where the Prime Minister has arrived at the UN headquarters in New York. Okay, now as I said, let's come back to the larger debate when you talk about the strategic importance of Indo-US ties. Now, more and more, Shri Iyer, I want to bring you in, and Patikrit also, because, he had a completely different view on this, which is that more and more you're having the world being largely aligned into two axes. You have the China cycle or circle of power, which of course includes Pakistan, Russia, and then of course you have the United States. And yes, we are beginning to be in a world of binaries. Is that what it is? Which is why, when you talk about the S-400 deal, it becomes that much more crucial and takes that much more, assumes that much more importance.
India can be playing a balancing act. Remember that India has a huge trade imbalance with China too. We are a big net importer from them. So what India needs to do is what is good for India. And I see that in the near future, India is going to stop talking about H-1B visas and all that stuff and instead create similar high-paying jobs in India itself. And a way that will happen is for some of these defense companies of US to come and set up shop in India, because those things have a huge multiplier effect, and all of those will be resulting in higher paying jobs, higher prosperity, and that's exactly what you need. And one quick thing about Ashutosh's comment about Tulsi Gabbard, Tulsi is not seen as a serious competitor at this time in the Democratic lineup. If that things change, we'll see how it plays out. However, she had said that she wanted to, but she had a prior commitment because of which she couldn't make it. That's okay. And I'm not so sure about her funding resources. I disagree with what Ashutosh is saying. She gets funding from many people, and some of them who could have been in RSS, but it is not as if RSS is funding it. RSS doesn't fund anybody. I really doubt that.
Okay, yes, Patikrit.
Gauri, I want to say one thing. I agree with Professor Nalapat that there are certain critical equipments we have to take from the United States. If you look at some of the major deals that have happened, agreements like Comcasa, Strategic Trade Authorization Level 1, MTCR, Australia Group, Wassenaar Arrangement, all these things happened under Trump. That means they actually treat us as a strategic partner, but India is also very cautious in certain areas that I can be your strategic partner, but I am not going to get into your fight with others. So it would have an independent foreign policy. Of course, India is a strategic partner of United States. When it comes between China and United States, we would always tilt towards United States. There's no denial of that. But that independent foreign policy aspect, I think you can talk to anybody in the Indian Armed Forces and the diplomacy and the political leadership and the party, the party that is Bharatiya Janata Party. What I have understood from my deliberations in all of them, they are not willing to give up that independent foreign policy. It is because of certain issues in the past that we had to develop the cryogenic engine, our own IRNSS navigation system.
Okay, all right. So completely out of time, but I want to ask Ambassador Fabian before we wrap up, sir, how much riding on this crucial bilateral right now, sir?
Well, I think this crucial bilateral, much rights, but at the same time, we should not sort of overemphasize the importance of a particular event. And I want to make another point. You said that the world, we find on the one hand the United States and on the other hand China, and you correctly said China, Russia and Pakistan. But there are many other countries, many other powers, say the European powers.
Yes.
So it is not going to be bilateral, binary, bipolar as.
Yes.
Now, coming to the United States, I believe it is in our interest to have closer and closer relations with the United States. But I do not want an asphyxiating embrace.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.